Hello, good day class. So, sorry for the long update. So, what I did was I already finished the online discussion I made, but when I checked all of them, okay, so the file was corrupted. May audio, pero ang kakatabo sa video is do black screen nga may black screen from time to time. Dayon do gagwa lang ang mouse cursor nga do lag. So, amo na liwaton ko na lang gid din sa puno kaysa nga audio lang mahatag ko kag siyempre di man gyapon mapusdan, huya man ko i-upload sa inyo sa internet. So, amo na. So, upload ko ni dayon instantly after I finish this para at least kasugod na kita. Plan ko tani like this eve i-upload ko na sila tanan para daw diretso na bala. Same with the quizzes sa weekend para at least tapos na. So, hindi man ka makabaraka since maliwat ko sa puno. Sorry, gid. Ah, wala kita choice. So, at least listen ka na liwat. Okay, so ang online discussion tanaw brown for those nga nag-attend sa atong klase. Para fair man sila kapag nadami mga iba yapon wala attend may mga busy sa ako ano man nila reason. At least tawahay man ng mga attend kasi really na-appreciate ko gid nila nga effort kaysa nga permi ko sila bugtawon aga sila man lang gihapon. Okay. Hindi man dito ko laway man sila nga part man lang. Okay, so ang force na lecture tani sa midterm but ano ko lang gihapon, i-add ko lang gihapon sa atong finals. Since sa atong finals mas hard atong mga topic nga iban, therefore we will go kung sa din masapos. So ang force is one of the easiest topic since may more pa sa theoretical kagang solving sa hindi ko man pagpa-apply sa inyo since hindi nyo man need. Okay, so ang force, the meaning of the force, it is the pull or push. But scientifically, force does not stop there. Okay, it is practically explains the movement that occurs around us. Since movement is change as a result of your motion, and motion is the result of your force. Force is used to change the state of a body that rests to motion. Likewise, it can also change the motion of the body. Changes are controlled by forces. Okay, in your force, you have there your Hooke's law. Kina-discuss ko na sa midterm. Okay, in simplest term, or ang principle sa mga Hooke law, okay, so ang force na gina-apply mo sa hook or spring hook is proportional sa force, the distance nga makuha mo sa change sa imong original position sa imong endpoint sa imong hook is proportional sa force nga gina-apply mo. Okay? So, from here, you have the original position. You have there, gibutangan niya weight ang imong hook. Therefore, nag-change ang distance. Okay, anong ganang force gina-apply di? Okay, ang force nga ara sa object. That object nga ginahang na may gravitational force nga naga-apply that. Therefore, ang imong original position sa imong hook nagpanaog. Okay, so that is gina-apply ni or ang gina-represent sa imong triangle kag x. Okay, ang triangle nga na it signifies change ang x na okay it signifies the distance. Okay, so the proportionality between the F applied to the bottom of the hook of the spring and the displacement of your change in X of the spring may be written as proportionality sign. Okay, what is proportionality sign? Proportionality sign is the infinite sign siya but at sa end point. Okay, so zoom in ko. Zoom in ko para mas makita nyo. Okay, ang may punta. Okay, which is mathematically expressed as force is equals to K change in X. Okay? Where K, zoom out ka na eh. Nagtatagan ko dabi. Ano yung coffee ni? Okay, so where K is proportionally constant of the spring known as your spring constant. So usually, if may mga makita ka mo sa inyo mga equations ng letter K, it signifies constant. Okay? So you have there forces in your solid. So you have three forces ka sa solid. Forces or stress. Nagtalan ako. Ang forces sa mga solid, you have their stress. Okay, then you have three types of stress. Okay, stress is the deform of your solid body, either permanent or temporarily, when applied to a given area of which it is exerted. Stress is classified as your tension, compression, and shear. Okay, tensile or tension nga stress. Okay, is applied to an object at an equal and opposite force away from each other at the both ends. So tanawan nyo ni, this is ang original nga object, pero kung nag-apply ka sang force at both side at equal gid nga area, okay, then opposite direction, nag-spread out siya. So tension, ginbutong mo away from each other. Next is your comprehensive stress. Okay, it is defined with equal and opposite force acts towards the center. You have here ang demonstration or ang illustration ni gas kita mo nga may mga broken lines. Okay, broken line signifies that it is the original position. So, kay ginbutang ka sang compressive. Compressive means i-press mo into a center. Okay, kaya nag-apply ka force at both equal nga area, pero ang iya nga direction is toward each other, therefore na-compress ang object, giving it a compression. Next is your shear stress. It is applied when equal and opposite forces but have different lines of action. So, ang shear mo is similarly the same sa imong nga tensile or tension. Pero ang imong nga area ang gina-applyan is different or opposite. You have here the force 1 that is being applied sa lower left and your force 2 is being applied sa upper right. So that is your shear stress. Next, ang imong next nga point is your elastic limit and your ultimate strength. Okay, so what is elastic limit? It refers the largest stress that can be applied to an object before or without permanently deforming it. Ibig sabihin, pwede pa sa kabalik sa iya nga original nga form or ang iya original nga status. Okay, when an object elastic limit exceeds, okay, may makita ka na dayon nga break, may possibilities nga mag-break ng object, but due to respect to its ultimate strength or pinaka-last na gid, okay, with each maximum tension, an object can withstand. Okay, so ang before gani ma-break ang amo na object, for example, is your rubber band. Okay, so makita nyo yung mga rubber band may elastic limit. Okay, elastic limit, whenever you stretch it, i-stretch nyo lang sa mabalik sa original. Pero kung tamaan na gid sa ka-stretch and ma-exceed na imong elastic limit, okay, you will see mga white spots na katama. Okay, therefore, lapit na siya sa iyang ultimate strength. Kung ma-exceed na gid na sa iyang ultimate strength, mabugto na. Okay? So, next topic tayo would be your vectors. Okay, vectors are quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Okay, this quantity is called a vector. A vector quantity can also be described by questions how much and which way, whereas other quantities, quantity that is fully described by your magnitude alone can only answer how much. Okay, magnitude is kung ano ang distansya. Okay, so is known as your scalar quantity. Moreover, a vector quantity is illustrated by an arrow whose tail is described as the origin. Then, ang imong body sa imong arrow is your magnitude. Then, ang imong arrowhead is your direction. Okay? Forces in the same direction are added and subtracted if they are in the opposite nga directions. Okay, so may illustration na rin sa dalong. You have here, first example, you have your 10N, padto sa diin, padto sa right. Okay, then you have their 7N, padto sa may right man gihapon. Ano ng letter N? Okay, it signifies as Newton, unit for force. Okay, so 10N plus 7N, kay same direction, you have 17N. Okay, same direction. Next is your, same lang gihapon ang given, you have 10 and 7, but the 7 is going sa different kind of direction. So, you have 10N minus 7N is equals to 3N. Okay? Kaya nag-minus siya because it is in opposite directions. Okay? Next, resultant vectors. Resultant vectors is a vector sum whose effect of two or more vectors acting at a common point. Ibig sabihin, same nga direction. For example, this is sa mga 10N, yung mga resultant vector is ari sa punta ni sa mga 10N. So from this point to this point, that is 10N. Then another nga another nga vector 7N gyapon but same direction. So pad to di kunabi lang nga connected sila. So that would lead into 17N nga resultant vector. Next, kung dire you have 10N pad to di, Next, pero kay 7n pa do sa opposite direction, so nagbalik siya. So that would be 3n. Okay nga man, resultant vector mo 3n lang, hindi 7n. Sir, kay nagkadto, for example, di ba nagkadto di? So amo na ni dito nagbalik naman siya. Okay, so ang iyang measurement sa mga resultant vector is from origin until sa last nga head. Diba? Kaya ang last mga head is 7n. So medyo makasalala, kaya doon hindi magawa pero try ko lang. So may draw di nga option. Wait. Okay. Yes. Okay, so for example, this is your origin. Diba mo na? So from here, that is your 10n. Then, may 7n ka pa. From here, what? To, muna. So, for example, amo na. So, sir, nga ang iyang resultant vector or yung mga, this are total is 3n. Or the same lang sa gyapon sa imong nga resultant vector. Okay, from this point to this point, that is 10. Then, nagbalik sa 7. So, this is your final nga head. Pakunabi lang ang connected gid sila. So, ang imong resultant vector is the sum of those nga vectors nga acting. Kaya di ba ang rule di gani kung opposite direction, so subtract. So, from your original to here, so this is 3n. Amo man lang naka-simple. Okay, describing your vectors using graphs. Okay, in finding the resultant graphically, each vector should be added to the other vectors graphically. This method is known as your graphical method, in which two ways are describing vectors graphically as follow. So you have here first nga graph or first nga graphical method, which is your parallelogram. Okay, first you need to draw the vector to scale where the origin is shown by its tail and the arrowhead in its direction. Okay, you have here V1. Your V1 signifies your vector 1. So, 6n east. Then your V2 is 4n 30 degrees east of north. So, first, you need to scale anay. So, for example, your scaling is in every 0.5 centimeters, there is 1 n. Okay, so ibig sabihin, you need pila ka arrow o pila ka n. So, you need 6. So, this signifies as your starting point. Dire, po dire yan ang illustrate. So, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, in every, or in every magnitude or scale yan is 0.5. So, if you have 6, okay, so you have 0.5 times 6, that would be, pila? You have 3 man. You have 3.0 centimeters. Okay, so amo nang iya nga scale. Okay, next kay syempre na-draw mo na ang imo nga vector 1. So your vector 2 okay, so your vector 2 is from same nga origin you have there. From 0 to padto galing kaso by angle siya. Okay, angle signifies kung sa ano sa kalapit man, kung sa din sa gawa lapit. So you have your 30 degrees angle east of north. Ay wala daw may protractor so hindi tayo ma-measure. So you have there north of north. You have 4n 30 degrees east of north. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you have there 4n. Okay, what you do next is draw a parallel image of that vector. Okay, so masignify ang parallel because of ngay may kulit. Kita niyo man daw. Okay, ang daw kulit nga, that is your parallel. Okay, so from this point, you have the parallel of your V2. So, ibig sabihin, kay parallel, mirror image. So, dire mga origin. So, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then, dire you have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, daw mo na yung mga parallel. Okay, then to get the resultant vector, draw a line kung sa dili mga origin paadto sa imong nga origin nga parallel. So, from here, there. So, pila ka linya ni? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you have 8n as your resultant nga vector. Okay, so kung i-scale mo siya, if you have in every 1n, you have 0.5 centimeters. So 0.5 times 8, pila? So you have 4.0 centimeters nga resultant vector. Amo man na nakasimple. Next is your head to tail. Okay, head to tail method is mas convenient siya gamiton if you are having two or more resultant vector. Okay? Kaya kung resultant vectors ang head to tail ay mo gamiton niya class, okay? Isa lang ka origin ang imo nga gamit. Kung sa diin ang imo head, that would be your origin 2. So for example, if you're given V1, V2, and V3, so same lang yung option sa same lang sa babaw, you have your V1, V2. So from here, that is your V1. From this point sa head sang imo nga V1 to this is your V2. Then ang head sang imo nga V2, this will be V3. Okay? So from this angle, ang matabo na, okay, kaya diba this is ang scale mo, no? Kunabi this is ang origin. Okay, so in every vector, ang imo nga point gid sa origin is do may cross kagay you have your north, east, west, and south for your direction. Medyo tiko ang akong nga arrow. So from here to this point is 6n. Then maubra ka naman di cross liwat. Okay, kasi signify nga 0 na di sa mga point. So from this point to this point is 4. Okay. Next is, kadiri naman yung mga point. So, dili ka naman ubra. So, pila? You have 5 from south of east. Okay, may angle sa 40 degrees. South of east. So, dili yung angle. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Ang imong resultant vector, to in simplest term, is kung sa diin ang imong nga origin sa first mo gid nga vector paadto sa last nga head. So, this is your resultant nga vector. Okay, so wala lang ginisip nga scale since hindi na di-calculable since we're not using graphing paper. Okay, di ba graphing paper masapos since makaprovide ka sang scaling. Kung makita nyo ng graphing paper nyo, di ba class, it is a paper that has mga box, so that is your graphing paper. Next, you have here vectors by mathematical method. I-skip na lang ni since you'll be using scientific calculator kag budlay ni isolvon kag galagas sa tasubong since I lost all my files. Sa una to gin-explain ko pa ni. So sorry gid. Next, component method. Same lang gihapon. Using galing siya sa mga Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so if may mga vectors ka nga, same if given, okay, ang imong result or component vectors, okay, in simplest term, dasigon ko lang pag-explain. So, for example, if you have your graph to, diba, or imong arrow. So, ang gahigda, that signifies your x, ang gatindog, that signifies your y. Okay? So, if you are given with vectors nga gapatindog tanan and vectors nga gapahigda tanan, you sum them all up. Okay, you have there ax, bx, cx, so on and so forth. So, i-add up mo lang na sila tanan. Hindi ka pwede gamit sa mga vectors nga parehas ni nga may mga angles. Kaya mas mabudlayan ka. So, it is only applicable sa mga vectors nga gapahigda. Gapa mo lang na or gapa amo na. Then, mga gatindog for your y or gapa naog. Okay, so ang e nga ni signifies the sum of. Ang x ni signifies ang mga vectors nga gahigda or mga horizontal. Horizontal di magigda. Then, vertical ang mga gatindog. So, na pagkatanda ko. Next, ang mga y. Okay, ang magyapon ng mga gatindog or gahigda or gatindog. Then, isum up mo sila. Okay, once you sum them up, okay, ibutang mo lang siya sa imo nga this equation. The resultant is equals to square root of the summation of your total nga Rx squared, square nyo ha, then plus the total of your Ry squared. Okay, so madula mo ng square root kay paon 1 ang square. Okay, so that sums up sa aton nga vector. So, you have here mga given nga example. Okay, so, kamo na wala. Next is the frictions. Okay, nature of your friction. Friction is a force that opposes and resists motion, which involves objects that are contact with each other. You have there first your static friction. A static friction occurs between the surface at rest relative to each other. Next is your starting friction. Okay, so duwa ang imong Fs. It's either static or starting friction. Starting friction is a maximum friction between stationary objects. Next is your sliding friction or kinetic friction. So wala na saging Fs. Okay, so it is now Fk ang iyang shortcut or ang iyang symbol. Next, or the definition, sliding friction is a frictional force between objects that are sliding with respect with each other. So you have here this object na square box. Okay, you have the friction normal force, which is ara na in every object that is in contact. So sa pabababaw, so it is halin sa object nga for kung this example is a floor. Next is your body weight. So FW. So it is the body weight of your object. Ano difference sa imong body weight kag sa imong body mass? Okay, the body mass is kung ano ka kabugat. The body weight is ano ka kabugat with the gravity nga gaapekto sa imong lawas. Ibig sabihin, for example, if your kilo mo subong, okay, so if your kilo is around 55, or kung nabi na lang 65, okay, but if you are, kung mapakilo ka man dayon niya, kung sa diin there is no gravity, okay, for example, ara ka sa moon, okay, mas magaan ang imong body. Why? Because the gravitational force here in Earth is around 9.18, okay, so meter per second squared. So that is the gravitational force sa gina-apply sa lawas tao. Ibig sabihin multiply ang imong body weight sa gravity. So you have here force, frictional friction and friction nga gina-apply. Ibig sabihin gina-push mo ang object paadto sa left nga area. So you have here block being pulled along the space thing with several forces or your frictional force. It is the sliding friction. The block does not move until Fa apply exceeds the force of starting friction, which is usually greater than your F. Okay, measuring your friction, you have their coefficient of your friction. Okay, so yung symbol is micro. The ratio of your force of sliding friction is Ff to the normal force Fn perpendicular pressing the surface together. This is technically written as the coefficient of your friction is equals to Ff or sliding friction over your normal force. Okay, so hindi tayo magbadalman, hindi tayo mapapasulban sa friction. So usually sa ating finals, it would be around critical na. So, hindi ka mo magkabalaka. And before finals, I will provide a reviewer. Sa diin, dito maugya po nakuha. So, kag-isa pa, kapin na sa mga quizzes, please make sure to familiarize with the question since ipagawa ko man na liwat. I-change ko lang mga questions. So, bakas-bakas lang. Okay, so let us now move on. So, we are now on velocity and acceleration. So, pila na minutes? Hindi ko makita ang time. Let me pause it. Okay, so let us continue. Okay, so velocity and acceleration. Okay, it was in Galileo's time that the motion through space was described in terms of displacement, with both magnitude and direction at the same time. The described motion is customarily to use the displacement or the change in your d. Okay, ang d signifies displacement, a vector having both magnitude and your direction over the change in time interval. So average velocity is defined as mathematically as v is equals to change in your displacement over time. So that is your velocity. So class lang di ka mo maglasa, ang v nga ginato is your vector, but now ang v nga subong is your velocity.
Okay, the word speed is frequently used to refer the magnitude of a scalar part of your velocity or ano man sa kada sigon. So, gina-define mo na ang ay mga velocity as your speed. A vector quantity is specified by how much and which way. The vector nature of your velocity becomes important when you add two velocities together. Like forces, they are added numerically when at the same direction and subtracted kung this opposite man nga direction. Next is your instantaneous velocity. Or gusto matago na example. Okay, for example, if you're yung video drawing, dili lang ganyan. So, quiz-quiz lang ko lang niya. Okay, for example, if you're okay, so drawing ko ng tarak-tarak. Okay, so yung mga tarak-tarak. Okay, so from this point padto sa didiri nga point. Okay, so ang imong distance is 5 meters. Okay, then from that point, from the original point padto di sa din sa subong. Okay, within 10 seconds. So, so this is 5 ha? 5. Okay, hindi ako nag So, 5 meters from its original to iya nga final nga destination. Ibig sabihin, if your displacement is 5 meters, okay, then ang imo nga time is 10 seconds. Okay? Therefore, yung mga velocity is 10 divided by 5. Ibig sabihin, ang imo velocity is pila? 1 half. Oh, so it is 1 half 0.5 meter per second. Amo na nakasimple. So the unit for your velocity, yung mga velocity is in meter per second. Meter why? Because sa distance or units ang imo nga length. Then units sa imo nga time which is seconds or depende kung ano ginagamit. Okay, pero usually it is in meter per second or kilometers per second usually kung sa salakyan, di ba? Kita niyo man the travel of your car is around 20 or 80 kilometers per hour. Amo na. So wala man sigid sang standard with each regard sa units sa ating vectors, but usually you have there distance gid na dapat sa babaw and time sa dalo. Okay, so ang amo ni nga triangle ga-signify if you are looking for other quantities. Okay, for example, if you're looking for a vector, for your velocity. Velocity is displacement or distance over time. Pero if you're looking for your distance naman yung class, okay, so distance, kaya ra siya sa babaw. Okay, ito lang tamo sa mga paramid gani. Okay, kaya di ang imong ginapangita, therefore you will be using your velocity and your time. Therefore, distance is equal to velocity times time. Okay? Kaya nga man kay ma-cancel out na ang imong mga units sa imong mga time. Nga man, ang unit di ba sa imong vector is usually meter per second. Then if your unit for your time naman is second, kaya sa babaw. So cancel, leaving you the unit of meter or yung mga distance. Taro? Now if you're looking for your time naman ya class, okay, kung why nasa time C mo, okay, so the formula you will be using would be distance over velocity. Why? Okay, if you're using distance divided by velocity, if your unit for your distance is m, then ang unit sa mga velocity is meter per second. But since divided by siya, kay matabo ni is for example, ang unit or ang iyang value, i-divide mo. Pero when it comes sa unit, okay, ang rule na sa unit, if i-divide mo, okay, what will happen? It will be multiplied sa amoni sa babaw. Kaya since ara sa kidalom siya, di ba? Ma-interchange ang unit. Okay? Giving you the unit of seconds over meter. So kay i-multiply mo meter sa babaw kag meter sa dalom, cancel out, leaving you the unit for your time nga second. So amo na nakasimple ang mga units. Okay, next is your instantaneous velocity. Instantaneous velocity is the ratio of your displacement. Ano ko na ni? Hindi na eraser. Eraser. Hindi ko kita. Okay. So, instantaneous velocity is the ratio of displacement over time, except we specify that the time be only at a constant time. At a constant time refers to the infinitesimally small bit of time, smaller than anything, that we could imagine. Average velocity, on the other hand, refers to the same direction of displacement over time, except that time is some finite intervals of time. The distinction only becomes important, as we shall see, when the velocity is changing. For those who take calculus, this will be an excellent example of what meant to be derivatives. Okay, next is your acceleration. Okay, so anong pagkalain sa imong acceleration sa imong velocity? Acceleration class, okay, sa your definition, is defined as the rate of change of your velocity. Just like velocity, acceleration is a vector quantity with magnitude and direction. The accelerator in an automobile is a pedal that produces acceleration in the same direction as the initial velocity. Then the brake produces an acceleration pero sa opposite nga direction in which they are originally going. An acceleration in this direction is frequently called as your DC acceleration. For example, class, if you are amo gani yung mga vehicle ay okay. Okay, try out that. Na may sa lakyan. So, tatantan sa mirror. Okay? So, if your car is only going that way, so that is your uh, velocity. But if ang imo nga car, okay, going that way, but increasing pa gadugang niya speed, that is your acceleration. Okay? If constant lang yung speed, that is your velocity. So, the speed. Okay? Ang ga-build up nga speed, nga gadugang amat-amat, that is your acceleration. So, ga-accelerate. Okay? Ang ginaminya ni class nga yung mga brakes is also an acceleration, pero kay opposite direction. Okay? Ang ginaobrayan na is ginabuhinan niya amat-amat ang imo speed until malabot ya ang halt or makastop ang imo nga vehicle. Okay, so ang tawag yan na is your DC acceleration. Okay, so for your unit for acceleration, okay, so it is uh, A stands for acceleration is equals to change in your velocity. Ibig sabihin, you have your initial velocity. For example, di ba, kung basta may original na sa nga velocity, then kay gadugang sa gadugang, then you will have your final nga velocity kung sa diin nag-start siya change. Then you have their change in your time. Okay? So, ang unit yan, usually, di ba, yung mga units ng imong vector, sa imong velocity is meter per second. Di ba? Divided by time. Di ba? Ano ganyan ba ko rule sa regarding sa unit? Okay, di ba? Aras dalom, divided by, i-divide mo ang unit or ang value sa imong vector over value sa imong time. Pero ang unit yan na masaka sa babaw. Kay since this is whole number, do may ara sa kunabi, imagination ta lang nga may 1 da siya. Okay? What will happen? Masaka sa babaw. If masaka sa babaw, times na. Okay? You will have times 1s. Okay? Therefore, the unit for acceleration is meter per second square. Nga nga aman, kaya di ba mag-multiply ka sa imong unit, m times 1 and s times s. Therefore, kay same sila nga unit, you'll have second squared. So, may idea na kamo nga nag-second squared ang imo nga time. Okay? So, under motion, constant acceleration, we now have enough equation to solve any problems involving constant acceleration. We can find time, distance, or average velocity, assuming we know that other two. Okay, ano ginamit niya ng other two? The other two, very important gidya, is your distance and your time. So, if you have distance and time, you will have your vectors gidya, velocity or velocity nga average. So, amo ni distance and your time, distance your velocity. Okay, if we don't know the average velocity, we can find them from your initial and your final nga velocity. Kaya di ba? Kaya di ba nga balde sa para magkuha ka sa mga constant nga acceleration. Okay, so what is ang average? 'Di ba average is kung i-sum up mo ang total nga values, then i-divide mo kung pila sila below. So, para makuha sa imong mga velocity average, you have your VF plus VI. VF stands for your final nga velocity plus VI nga initial velocity. Divided by 2 kay duwa man lang imong nga unit or imong nga factors. So, that will be your velocity average. Dapat maghatag example gali no. Okay, for example, balik na sa acceleration na. Okay, for example, if you're being asked for your acceleration, if you're given velocity of 30 meters per second, okay, then ang imo nga average, so change na. So, direkta na na. So, then if your time, okay, is 15 seconds, okay, so what will happen is, i-divide mo lang, you have your acceleration equals to 30 by 15 unit mo, meter per second, over 15 seconds, then you will have acceleration of 2 meters per second squared. So that would be your acceleration. Okay, class. So same mangyapon, class. I will same mangyapon, pwede mo magamit ng triangle nga niya. So this is the triangle of truth by your sir. So the triangle of truth, same lang na. So, if you're given with 3 nga mga units nga mo ni, pwede ka ubra sa imong triangle of truth. Okay. So, sa left side, you have your A. You have your acceleration. Okay. Triangle, okay, nga man, may ara sa babaw. Anong ara sa babaw? You have your velocity. Okay, so, katagid yung change. Then, anong sa right side? You have your time. So, can just make that your triangle. So, if you're given with acceleration and a change of time, you can also solve for your change of time. Change of your velocity, you can solve for time. So, paano ng time naman, sir, nga formula, sir? Hanawan nyo lang da. Anong ara sa babaw? Change in velocity over acceleration. Sir, anong formula, sir, sang change ng vector, sir, if you're given with acceleration and time? So, kaya ara siya sa babaw, you have your change in your vector. Ano yung mga formula? You have your acceleration times time. Amo lang naka-simple mag-derive sang formula when it comes to physics and other mga math nga subjects. So, very easy lang to lang mo sa mga shortcut. Okay. So, same. Okay, average. Okay, so gina natulo na dere. Dere, if you are given with the final and initial, tandaan nyo lang, final and initial to go, solve for average. So, sa average yan eh. So, para sila mag-solve ka mo sa mga average yung mga grades. Diba? I-add up nyo na tanan, then isipon nyo kung pila sila kabilog. So, amo ng factor mo kaya sa dalom. Kaya ang imong gingamit nga factor is only final, kag initial, duwa lang sa kabilog. Therefore, you have 2. Okay, so velocity average is your final velocity plus your initial velocity. So, may mapagkalain if you have your initial nga nubo kag initial nga taas, final nga taas. I-add up mo na. Okay, as long as the acceleration is constant, we have seen the average velocity in the same average velocity the same as the average of the velocity. We can therefore combine equation 1 and 2. Okay, so ano naman ni sa sir ang ano ning equation. Okay, kaya di ba sa diri sa babaw you have an equation V average. So ang mga V average can be used as this equation. So ginbustan niya ang V average sang amugid ni. So you have VF plus VI over 2. Okay, then you will have the change in your velocity over time. Okay, so ang change in your velocity over time is ang unit para sa imo nga acceleration. Tandaan niyo na. So, kay di ba constant? Okay, ginagamit yan ni ang V average because constant ang imo nga acceleration. Okay, we can also rearrange the initial and final velocities to find one of the other that defines of your acceleration. Okay, kung ano pagid ni, kay di ba? A is equals to VF plus VI over time. Kaya may time na is equals to change in your velocity over time. Di ba daw 2 na diyo? Ay, hindi. Check to wali. Ay, hindi, tsakto, tsakto, tsakto. Okay? Class, tanawan nyo di class ha. Okay, ando ako naglasa gali sa umpisa. Okay? VF minus VI. Okay? So, dire plus, dire minus. Okay? Over time. Because the change in your velocity is affected because sa final minus initial. Nga gina-minus ang final because usually ang imong final velocity is higher than your initial velocity. Kaya di ba ang initial mo, starting mo usually nubo, then ga sudden increase ka, so that is your acceleration. Okay, so VF minus VI. So, hindi, kay kung plus class ha, it is looking for your average. Pero kay minus, that is looking for the change in your velocity. Okay, so over time. Okay, so, dito na pagbadalman na, let's say, okay. Okay, so let me end this video na lang sa dire. So, if you have comments like you want to proceed sa gusto tawagin pagpadalman ni, or we will just move on sa next na topic that would be around acceleration due to gravity. Then, project motion. Skip na naman eh. Okay, gravitational pull. Ma-discuss lang ko. Skip ko lang in regards sa solving. Since hindi ko gusto magudlayan. Then, centrifugal force. Usually, mga theories lang. Tandaan nyo lang din na. Then, centrifugal force. Solvings, problem solvings. Okay, then we will go to work and energy. Power, kinetics. Momentum. Impulse. Yung mga problem solving. Next is density. So, mamore kita sa density. Then you have here heat. Then temperature. Okay. So, next natin nga topic would be madamo-damo gawa. So, depende sa inyo if you want nga padalmon ko gid. Wa mo magyapon mabudlayan. So, chat lang ta sa GC if you want to add kung sa akong nga topic. Okay, at least maka-apat pa kita ka-topic before we will have finals. Target sa date sa atong finals would be February 15. So, at least namin anayin yung adlaw before that. So, damo pa. So, at half pa lang gani kita to. So, we are only 1/4 pa lang sa atong topic. So, next kong upload would be around Thursday. Kaya ginadalian ko nang gini-upload. Kaya siyempre galagas ko kaya nakurap ako ng mga files. So, sorry gid, ang mga quizzes would be uploaded around Saturday. Although pwede ko man sa i-upload if they are already done, kag finish na. Okay, so gusto na lang kita sa GC. So that would be all. So thank you and have a good day, class. Take care always.